Hello and welcome to another very special episode of Swapping Joysticks. I'm Ben Ostwick and I'm joined as always by
Me,
Ed.
Ed Nightingale. Hi, Ben.
Hello. And if you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll be able to see we have a special guest. If you're just listening, you're probably like, what's happened to their microphone? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a spare £600 to buy a third microphone, so Ed and I are sharing.
Show off.
We've got a very special guest here, and it's not Ed's wine bottle. How's the wine, Ed?
Delicious.
Yeah. We are joined by the one, the only, Juan.
Hello.
How do you pronounce it? Hidalgo?
It's Juan.
Yeah.
Oh, Hidalgo, yeah.
Yeah, there you
Perfect. Well, the H is mute.
Hidalgo, yeah.
We love to put an H in front of words.
And
Spanish.
not use it.
And not use it.
Ben, you're fluent in Spanish. You should know this.
How you doing?
Oh, no, I'm only fluent after a few drinks, and I haven't
We'll
had a few
get
drinks
drinking
yet.
in that case.
But, well, Juan, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us who you
Yeah.
are, where you come from?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Juan, as you've said before. I am surprisingly Spanish as well. I grew up in Spain, but I've been living in London for about 10 years now. So this is what I call home now, I guess. And so I am a localization project manager working at PlayStation.
Nice.
So, yeah.
How are you finding London?
London. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship.
Tell us what you hate. That brings in views.
Wow.
The weather.
Oh, tell me about
It's
it.
a bit stereotypical, but like when you come from Spain, you definitely miss the sun. The weather is one thing. You get used to it though. Like by now, I'm all right with it. The food for sure, another thing that Spanish people miss.
You don't like the tapas restaurants in Soho?
Oh, it's just awful because like when you first of all, it's not authentic whatsoever.
No.
But then when you when you go back home, in my case, when you go back to Spain and you go to these like actual tapas bars, and then you first of all you pay nothing for it, for what it is.
€1 for a canya.
Well, yeah, literally you pay for the beer and then you actually have food as well with it for free. It's like, I don't know, it just tastes better.
Where can we get good ham in
Here
London?
in London.
Because that's the best thing ever.
I mean, yes. It's
I
just
suppose.
so expensive. Yeah.
I suppose that actually in Clapham, as I was going to get the train, I saw just a shop where they just sold hamon, and it was like, oh, interesting. It looked quite all right, but I suppose you're paying a fortune for it.
Yeah, I mean, ham on Iberico is already quite expensive in Spain. So
exactly.
it's going to be.
I genuinely think that might be my favourite food.
Yeah, genuinely same. I mean, that was the best. I used to go to Enrique Thomas in Barcelona because they used to do like a bit. This is nothing to do with video games, but they used
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will get there. There was a like. So Enrique Thomas is a place that sells hamon, cured ham, and cheese as well, and you can also have a beer there. And there's quite a few of them, but there was a place on Rambla de Catalunya, or just nearby, Plaza Catalunya in Barcelona, and next to it, if you walk past it, they had like a side window, and you could kind of like for lunchtime, you could go and get yourself choose what like grade of ham you want, and they'll put the tomato, so you can have like the really expensive. It's like you can either pay.
Oh, fair enough. The quality,
yeah. So I used to get the most expensive one, because why not? And
I mean,
Bougie.
but like it was €5 for a really like the best quality ham inside a baguette with the tomato.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's
tomato
my
and
favorite.
garlic.
That's my favorite.
Yeah,
and
the
we
olive
have
oil.
that for breakfast as well. Like sometimes. So if I was to make that here, I go to like Jimenez, for example, and I get what I think is the most, like expensive, good quality like type of jamon, and then I taste it. It's like, what is this? It's like not
Tasteless.
even
It's like the Serrano. Anyway, I'm really hungry now.
Same.
It's good. You're cooking later.
I am.
You cooking
I've
hamon?
heard Ed's food is like really good.
Ed's.
You've heard
correctly.
okay.
I mean, you did make 2 awful meals in a row last 2 days, didn't you?
Awkward.
Your words, not mine.
It wasn't my best, I'll be honest.
I was fine.
But
We didn't need
it's
flavour.
fine. I have a new air fryer, so we're going to be testing that.
There's all the rage about air fryers going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, your
That's
mum
some,
made. Yeah, his mum made like donuts in the air fryer, which actually
She tried.
I liked them. They were.
I've heard you can make steak in an air fryer.
Well, we'll find out what we're making later.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're
My
here to
dad's
talk
moved
about
on from
video
air fryers.
games.
My dad's gone on to sous vides now, hasn't he?
Well, if he wants to buy a new one and share it, then we'll take it.
Nice.
Anyway, we're here to talk about video games.
Oh, I know them.
Yes, because Juan, of course, works for PlayStation. But do you want to tell us a bit about your sort of gaming history? Like, what got you into games? What have you been playing recently?
Absolutely. So I think I've always been into gaming since I was very, very little. I just, saw my older brother playing games. I remember him playing like, I don't know, Resident Evil, the very first one, and me being like completely terrified about that.
Yeah.
The
Pale,
dog through the
white
window.
pale. No, the white pale zombie when the zombie like turns back. I remember having like nightmares for days with that. But like got into it playing games since I was again like very, very little. So I always knew I wanted to potentially work in that industry. That's not how it happened. No. I did study translation and interpreting, and I got into the film industry, funnily enough, doing a bit of subtitling, doing a bit of dubbing as well.
Any famous films that we know?
Yeah, so what I was working at, one of the agencies, the main clients were Disney, Warner Brothers, and whatnot. So my last, the last movie that I worked on while I was there was Infinity War and Endgame.
I've seen that.
Okay.
Did I see? Oh, I saw one of them.
You don't know Marvel.
No, I don't. I do. I play Spider-Man.
Wait, did I hear before that you were kind of like only Marvel type thing?
I mean, only Marvel. Yeah, I know more about Marvel than the
And
other
you don't
one.
know Endgame or Infinity War?
I saw
Like
one
potentially
of.
the best two movies of Marvel ever.
I saw one of them. I think I saw one of them, which is the one where they all disappear, or half of them do.
The Snap.
That bit.
Yes, I think I saw that one. I saw the bit where they all came back at once,
What,
and I was
that's
like, "Who's that
Endgame.
person? Who's that person? I don't know who that person is."
That's
Yeah.
Endgame when they all
Okay.
come back from the.
I think it was Endgame that I saw. I think the snap I just saw are clips on Twitter.
Oh.
There we go. Well, we like Spider-Man, maybe not you, the rest of Marvel. So
I've
much.
got you can be interested in something and not know everything about it.
That is very
that's
true.
good.
It's very true.
So yeah, it was good. I really liked it. I obviously love films. And the good perks as well of like getting invited to the red carpet premieres and whatnot. So yeah, it was great. And then I got into Sony Pictures from there, and obviously at Sony Pictures I was working at like the likes of like Jumanji and Zombieland as well.
I like Zombieland.
Really,
That was a good one.
really fun. My last one there was Charlie's Angel, the remake.
Oh.
And then yeah, through there I got the job at PlayStation. Yeah,
Oh,
Nice.
which was like woo,
I
dream
bet.
job.
What was the first game that you worked on at PlayStation?
It was Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which was
Great game.
again the dream. Like it was just like I arrived and I was like, oh yeah, perfect. One
How
of my
long-
favorite franchises as well.
How long before the release did you start working on it?
It was maybe about a year and a half maybe
Oh.
before it got released. A lot of early prep work, but by the time I actually started, because I was new, a lot of work had already been done. Not localization per se, but kind of like a lot of prep work, a lot of invoicing, budgeting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of not fun because people think, oh, working in games is just like the dream. It's
Just
so
sit around
fun.
playing
It's
games
a
all
lot.
day.
Yeah, exactly. It's
what
not
I
all
do.
about that. It's there's a lot of like budgeting that you need to like do and tracking and a bunch of things that it's like ugh, but
Yeah.
it's also really fun. So yeah.
So you mentioned Ratchet and Clank, and we
Yeah.
know that most recently you worked on Spider-Man 2. So is it
Yeah.
just Insomniac that you work on?
Mainly, not necessarily. So in my team, all of the project managers work on different titles depending on like the workload. That's up to the managers to allocate titles to each person. But yeah, I mainly focus on Insomniac games, which I love. I love working with Insomniac. They're a really cool bunch. Sadly, recently they got hacked, which was very
Yeah.
sad. It was so like I was literally on my way to New York for my holidays, and as I was in the plane, I was reading the news, and I was like, oh, this is so breaking. Honestly, because like
Yeah.
not only all the game stuff and things that got leaked, but it was just the personal data and stuff like that. It was like awful, and I was like, oh, this is the last thing that you need before you go on like Christmas break and whatnot. So it was like really sad.
I mean, let's just be clear. Like that's not a leak. That's theft.
Well, yeah, it's
like
not
that's
a leak.
literally. I mean, we always call it like, oh, this is leaked and that's leaked and something like that. You're like, no, this is theft. Like this is proper criminal activity. You should be in jail for that. Like that's awful.
Yeah. But I'm sure Insomniac are like so resilient and though they're getting back up to speed like so quickly as well. So I can't wait to like jump on the next title with them as well.
It turns out I forgot, like my memory's so bad, I've forgotten everything that was leaked out there.
Good.
Yeah, the worst memory.
That's the way.
So I'm going to be surprised when it does get announced.
I potentially like a lot of the things will change by the time games get released and whatnot. So, but yeah, it was sad, but I'm really excited to work with them again on a future title. So yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, I've also worked with Naughty Dog. I worked on the remake of The Last of Us Last of Us Part 1. Was exciting. It was obviously not the first time the game got released. It was kind of like a different experience, but we're doing new stuff for the game as well. So a lot of new things for me to learn as well. It was really cool to work with such a big developer as well, like Naughty Dog. So a lot of things as well that you learn from every single developer. Every developer works differently as well. Even though we're all part of like PlayStation Studios, every developer has like different ways of working or different like people in different departments that you learn so much from. So regardless of what game you're working on, as a project manager, you learn a lot. So I'm really jealous of the people in my team working on all the titles, like, I don't know, with Kojima production, as you've seen on the recent State of Play event. Obviously, Death Stranding 2 coming out as well.
Cannot wait. And then the spy espionage one that is not Metal Gear Solid.
It's Metal Gear Solid Hideo's version.
I like that.
He's such a character.
Yeah. Have you ever met him?
No, unfortunately not. I know people at PlayStation that have met him in person. But yeah, maybe one day. Who knows?
Yeah, just invite me along.
He is desperate. Absolutely desperate.
I just love Death Stranding, and it's weird because Metal Gear Solid, I played the first one, and I played one Ground Zeroes, quite a bit of 2, and quite a bit of 5, but I've never. I think I just need to go through them all.
Which one's your favorite?
You absolutely do.
My favorite. I mean, the ones I played. I mean, 1 was just great. I really liked the story. I liked the characters in it, and I also appreciate how kind of it just changed games completely. Like the fact that you had to use the box, like to work out a puzzle, you needed to use the box, like the actual box of the game. And and the memory card.
The memory card, like switching the controls.
Yeah.
It's like Mantis. I was mind blown by them. Yeah. I actually thought it was magic when I first played the game when I was like a kid. Obviously, I didn't know, but I freaked out completely. I dropped the controller. I was like telling my mom, the game is like reading my mind. I don't want to play this.
That's so cool.
That's what he wants.
But that's the thing with like Death Stranding. Have you played Death Stranding?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I won't spoil it for people, but Chapter 4, I started playing it. And the game's like, you play it for 10, 15 hours or so, and then Chapter 4 happens, and you're like, what game is this? Like, is this a different game? And then,
I don't remember what Chapter 4 is.
It's the first time you go... you go in the trenches. There's a tornado, and you get...
Oh,
yeah.
Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like,
the thing
what
is, like,
this?
Death Stranding, I think it's a fantastic game. Like cinematics and graphically, I love it. It's just, for me, the walking...
Yeah,
I could skip the walking in that game. I would happily like play that game without walking from point A to point B. And love it.
I love the walking bit, but I like a game that's just chilled. And I've mentioned this before on other podcasts, but I like the fact that when you walk and then the music kicks in, like the low roar, and I'm like, this is just really chilled and idyllic for me. But then later on, I went and got zip lines and roads and everything, and I unlocked... Have you played any of the extended edition?
Yeah.
Did you unlock the Roadster? Because there's a car that's There's a racetrack. Have you done the racetrack? Okay, so if you get the racetrack, there's a roadster vehicle that just like you can bomb down the roads like really, really quickly. So it makes it really fast.
Interesting.
If you didn't know, he's just got the platinum on it, so he's now
yes.
just all in Death Stranding land.
No, now I'm out of Death Stranding land. Now I'm in Death Stranding 2 land.
Are you a trophy hunter?
No, unless it's a game I love. If it's a game I love, I'm like, okay, that is. Yeah, if it's a game I love, I do, but only if there aren't any like really annoying trophies. Like I will search for them and be like, is it just, for example, Spider-Man? Like,
That's
yeah,
an easy one.
it's easy, but it's also like you finish the game and then if you want to get the platinum, it's like an extra 5 hours or 6 hours depending on how much you've done.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like something like that is totally fine, and I'm happy to do that. But I was looking today at like Yakuza 3. Have you ever
Love
seen the
those
platinum?
games.
Have you ever seen the platinum of it?
No, I never attempt any platinum.
You have
on
to,
any
like-
JRPGs.
Yeah, you have to.
Persona was the stretch, but
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to mass. Oh, Nier, you can just buy them at the end, can't you? Nier Automata.
That is true.
yeah.
But yeah, no, Yakuza 3, you need to kind of get like really high scores on all of the mini games and like learn all the different kind of random cards and like Japanese games,
Sounds dreamy.
board games.
Don't have time for that.
Apparently, it's just the worst.
I am a trophy hunter. I love getting the platinums. But it really bugs me if there is one of those trophies that is like grinding or like really hard to get. But I did get the Elden Ring one, for example.
Even Ed hasn't got that.
What do you mean even Ed?
He calls himself a fan.
Ooh.
I love Miyazaki.
You can pipe down.
The drama.
You haven't even finished it.
The drama.
I haven't finished
I
it
would
one
love
day.
to get the platinum on Elden Ring.
It took
What's
me
the hardest one?
3 playthroughs, I think.
Can't you reload the end?
No, I actually did 3
Oh, wow.
entire playthroughs.
And then afterwards, did you realize that you just
And
did
then
it?
afterwards, I realized that you could actually save before you do something that triggers one thing or another, and then redo it, and then you get the other trophy.
Ben Starr got that as well because we were interviewing Ben Starr. And he was,
Yes.
yeah,
I'm the
he
only
said-
one that doesn't have it yet.
No, I
Ben
don't have
Starr,
it yet.
but Ben Starr is such a gamer. Like,
Yeah.
He is.
I love him.
He's such a gamer slur.
I love Ben Starr.
Anyway, we wanted to talk more
Yeah,
about
let's
your
talk
job.
about-
and your
Let's talk about this is the Ben Starr Appreciation podcast.
Yeah.
So you work in localization.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a bit about localization or mentioned it. What is localization?
Yeah. So localization, actually, it's really good that you asked that question because a lot of people think it's like something completely different or whatnot. There's a lot of misconception about what localization is. People think it's just translation. You know, you're just translating games. No. So localization is a combination of a bunch of different practices. It could be for a game. It could be for a movie, something complete like a book, software, hardware, what else? It's the combination of practices that allow a product, in this case a game, to be released in different territories, different countries. So yes, translation is a big part of it, but also dubbing is a part of it, if there is voice in the game, of course. Age rating is part of it. Localization QA testing is part of it. It's a bunch of different things that are part of that localization umbrella that, in combination, doing all of these like little tasks, make the game available to different audiences like around the world. That's in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a more like scientific definition of the word like localization.
I thought it was really interesting. And it was made it, because when you first think of it, you go, oh, it's just, it's translating the audio and the dialogue and the text in the game. But it's not. It's like even localization involves working on like the cases for the games, isn't it? And like the cases for
the packaging.
Yeah, haven't you worked on packaging for hardware?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, funnily enough, every project manager in the team has like a business area as well assigned to us. Mine is the packaging one as well.
Of the games or of hardware or
both? Yeah,
okay.
Both. So I do manage the localization as well of different packaging of different games, and also hardware as well. So I do get to know a bit of like what's coming up in terms of hardware.
So we've got an exclusive right here.
No, of
No, I
course
don't
not.
want to get you
But
fired.
like, it's like
PlayStation 6 next year.
the confidentiality around having the super secret stuff I'm not even allowed to see.
Of course.
Yeah.
But someone in the company obviously has to like localize these stuff. So yeah, it's part of the job as well. Like not everything is just like, oh, working on games. No, there's a lot of other things as well that need to be localized. And yeah, thankfully our team, which is called International Production and Localization, does a PlayStation. So we just handle the localization of pretty much everything a PlayStation produces.
So as a project manager then, what does a typical day look like to you? Because it sounds like you're doing so many different things.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So prioritizing is a massive part of the job, really, because like you're bound to be like working on so many different things, not just games. Right now, for example, I'm not working actively on any games. I'm covering people. I'm covering someone on GT stuff, on Gran Turismo stuff. Someone that just went on holiday. Working on Helldivers 2, which is actually coming up as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing some bits here and there, but they're not my games, so it's just like doing small bits. But yeah, you just need to learn to prioritize, because it's like doing a bunch of different things. So if you're working on a game, so for example, when I was working on Spider-Man, that was obviously my main focus. So when I had to, plan something, obviously that was always a priority. Budgeting is a massive priority in projects as well. You always need to be on top of it. When things change, budget is the first thing that gets affected as well, and you always need to be in control of it, because then otherwise alarms get raised, and that's not fun. Like I hate numbers. I'm really bad with numbers. So when my numbers don't match, I just panic and I drop everything and I leave and I go to bed, because I'm like
That's what I do as well. Yeah, it's a gay thing.
Yeah,
Is it?
I think
Yeah,
it's
I
okay.
think
Okay.
Well, yeah, I was never good with numbers anyway, but it's part of the job as well. And yeah, emails, a bunch of emails from everyone, emails from marketing saying, oh, I need this by, next week. We're working on this trailer, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Blog posts, I don't know, there's a bunch of different things. And you basically need to prioritize and do one thing at a time.
I guess with that as well, you get to work with so many other departments, so
Absolutely.
it's not like there's a clear pipeline. You're kind of in the middle of loads of things.
Exactly. That's one of the best things actually working in localization, is just that you get to know a lot of different people from different departments, because everyone needs localization. So yeah, we work with marketing, we work with blogs, we work with operations for like packaging and stuff. We work with legal, we work with HR, we work with a bunch of different departments, different people, and yeah, we build relationships with these people, and yeah, it's really nice actually. You just get to see a different part of the business and what everyone is doing, and a lot of education as well for them, because obviously they don't really have a clue about localization or what it is, what we do. They just need, I don't know, whatever file or whatever asset, a trailer, whatever, it needs to be localized. And that's all they care about. They don't know what happens in the background. But yeah, that's what we do. And it's really cool.
Mm.
I don't know what was next. No.
No, I thought you were breathing in to say something.
Yeah.
No. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I was like,
okay, sure.
this is just me breathing normally.
So
You're
I
not
guess like
great.
obviously there's all these different projects you can work on, but the games are, I guess, the most exciting thing
For me,
generally.
at least, this actually surprisingly, believe it or not, there's people in the team or in general that actually don't like working on games, because it can
That's
be
okay.
And it's okay.
yeah.
It can be. Oh, it's actually people working at PlayStation that don't play games
What?
ever, and it's the best for their family and friends, because all the games that we get
Yeah.
for free as well. It's like, here you go.
But I suppose as well, like if you're spending all day working on games,
Yeah, it kind of
you might
ruins
wanna-
it. That's one of the myths, and it is actually true. It kind of like ruins it a little bit, because after you're working on a game for so long, and I don't know, you get to see it, and you see, for example, like a scene 20 times, as it happened to me on Spider-Man 2, the beginning of the game, that Sandman fight. If I didn't see 50 times in different languages, I didn't see it once. So when I actually sat down at at home playing it, I was like, oh,
this is work.
it is what it feels
Yeah.
like.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
You played in a different language completely and like have something new.
I do
true.
tend to play it in Spanish as well,
Okay, yeah.
just to pick up, and it's awful because then I pick up stuff I don't know that could have been better, or like a typo or something like that.
Oh,
but
no.
And then do you make notes?
it is a blessing, but also a curse. Because I do get to spot stuff and then I fix it myself because I'm Spanish and I spot something, but it is a curse, of course, because it's like you cannot ever take off the localization hat and actually get to enjoy the game
Yeah.
for what it is. But
Do you ever play other games as well in Spanish and go like, oh, this is a...
yes,
Do you notice terrible localization?
Play Midnight Suns in Spanish.
Ooh.
Because I was just curious to see what voices they chose, particularly for like Wolverine. And I think they did a good job, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, in general, I do play games in Spanish sometimes, but no, really, I just stick to English for most of them.
And I'm going to ask, sorry if I'm moving away from the questions and stuff, but
How dare.
How dare you? Surprised.
how much has things like moved on since, when we were, because you're a bit younger than us, I think.
Am I?
I think.
Am I? I'm 34.
Yeah, a little bit younger. We're the same age. We're both younger than Ed.
Okay.
And
Wow.
The shade.
but like when we were young, obviously, like when we were playing games, like they didn't really have any dialogue in it. Or if the dialogue was, it wasn't really necessarily voice, but like how has localization come along? And not necessarily just like in the game, but yeah, like in packaging and stuff like that. Did you notice that there's an improvement?
It's mostly technology that has advanced so much, the tools that we use and whatnot. But there is people in my team that have been doing the same job for about 20 years.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And they've worked on PlayStation 1 games that also had voice, and they had voice actors. Maybe those voice actors don't exist anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, the work was done.
Yeah.
With different tools, different tracking systems, I suppose, but voice acting has always been a part of it, and localization in general as well. So that I think that aspect of it has not changed. It's just that the technology and the tools that we use obviously have improved a lot.
Yeah, because we were playing. We're playing a game. When this goes out, it'll be after the embargo, so we can say. But we were playing the Tomb Raider remastered, and it's weird hearing the voice. I'm like, I remember this voice from. I wonder who was the voice for from the butler being walking around. Yeah.
Nowadays, do you work with? Because obviously we're a lot more, I guess, global now than maybe 20 years ago. Do you work with more languages and cultures now than you would have done previously?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They keep considering new languages for games. That's, for example, on the remake of The Last of Us Part 1, I had 2 new languages to work on from scratch. So it was kind of like working, for them it was like working on the game for the first time. For me, it was like, okay, I know this game already.
Which game? Which languages were they?
It was Greek and Turkish. So yeah, it was interesting. And they keep adding new languages and new markets to games. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, depending on how the game is perceived in those countries. But yeah, that keeps happening. Yeah. And it's a good trend, I suppose. Like it's good and so many like new developers are coming up as well, like Korean developers and Chinese developers as well. That adds like a new level of like a whole new challenge as well, because like we're used to working with English being the source, but when English is not the source, suddenly it's like Korean or it's Chinese or Japanese, like it's another layer of, okay, we first need to change that Japanese into English or Chinese into English, and then we can do all the languages.
Yeah.
And basically, it's not just like a word-for-word translation as well, is it? Because like with
exactly.
Final Fantasy 14, we both play, and there are lots of fates. Do you know fates in 14? Do you play much? Okay.
I haven't played 14.
Oh, we'll get you into it. But yeah,
you
there's like
want.
there are some events that happen, and they often have like the names of it are kind of puns based on
Right.
some various kind of pop culture references, and I'm like, I really wonder what they're like in Japanese, and if they're also
Right.
related to
That's
it.
true.
So
Well,
I mean,
even I don't know, Pokemon, for example, or Pokemon. Yeah, Pokemon. All the Pokemon names are
yeah,
different in Japanese, in French, and in German.
yeah, like totally different, aren't they?
For some reason.
Yeah.
Spanish kept them in English, and as they should. It's like, I always
canon.
know Charmander like as Charmander, but in France it's something different. So
Yeah.
like fire lizard or something like that in French, of course.
Yeah.
Weird.
Fayalizid.
Lizard de Fur,
Oh yeah.
maybe.
Maybe.
I don't
I
know.
don't like French. Hated it. I was good at it in school, but
Yeah.
I always hated it.
Yeah, I learned French and German and then went to live in Spain.
No,
Good one.
So, yeah.
fantastic.
Good one. So, say you are working on a game project rather than hardware or something. At what point does like your work join development? Because I guess it's maybe the assumption is that it comes in quite late in development once everything else is in place.
Yeah, so you need for us to actually be able to deliver our work, you need a stable build, like a game build. So it needs to be playable. It needs to have like content in it. Usually, that happens like post alpha in a game. So when the game is actually like has good content to be like played, and also kind of like is stable. It's not like crashing all the time and whatnot. It really depends at the speed the writers are writing content as well, and how often they're changing it. So usually we only start when they've locked content, when they think, okay, this is not going to change. It always changes. That's the biggest lie in localization, when a developer tells you, oh, this is final, this is never going to change, don't worry, go ahead and translate it and record it as well. And then like 5 months down the line, oh, we're going to change all of these lines that we said were final. You actually have to call back all of the actors, and actually one of the actors is the main character, which is booked for a million other things, so good luck finding them. But yeah, usually when we start working, it's in a pretty stable version of the game that, you know, can be played, but potentially not throughout, and potentially the cinematics and stuff look, some of them like storyboards or like without lip movements and stuff like that, and pretty rough. Not what you see, definitely not what you see in the final
Like
product.
a Nintendo game.
Yeah, like
Wow.
like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet type thing. No dishing. I love Pokemon Scarlet.
It's a really good.
It's
I
great.
have so many of my friends work at Pokemon as well, so sorry, but yeah, it's just the way it is.
Also, it's based on Spain, right?
Yeah,
It is.
of course,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love the references to it. I think it's
Violeta.
pretty well done. All these like references on like
Yeah.
Spanish culture and whatnot.
Is it like the south of Spain, isn't it?
It is. Well,
It's
some
not
of the
Catalonia.
cities. Well, I don't know. Some of the cities that you go to in the game are like, this is definitely Malaga, or this is definitely, you know, that kind of thing.
You should do that. You should let us know, and because we don't know, because I've only been to Barcelona and Zaragoza and Madrid, and Girona, but that's it really.
Well, you've been to a lot of places. Like,
Kind of the
Well, yeah,
north.
you've done quite a bit there.
Well, nothing further south than.
the south is a better part of Spain.
I
So
did go-
everyone going to Spain.
Go to the south.
Just go to the
Costa del
south.
Sol.
Yes.
I've been to what's that really, really Spanish place?
What, in Spain or in London?
Well, yeah,
It's
in
very,
Spain.
very Spanish.
The Spanish
place. No,
place in
it's me
Spain.
trying to be sarcastic, but I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, you've ruined your own joke.
Yeah, the place where all the bits-
Magaluf,
No, not Shagaloof.
Benidorm.
Not even Benidorm. It's the one that's near. It's where Portaventura is. Salo.
Oh, yeah.
What's next to Salo? There's something that's very British. I can't remember.
I've got no idea.
But yeah.
Sitges.
Well, I was going to say, I've been to Barcelona, I've been to Granada, and I've been to...
Oh, Granada
I've
is
been
really
to
good.
Sitges.
Yeah, that's the
Granada is
south.
one of my favorite towns in the south.
Yeah. I went on holiday with my parents. So I played classical guitar as my instrument at university. Because I studied
Spanish
music.
guitar.
Well, not the Spanish guitar is sort of a subset of like classical guitar.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of like flamenco. So we went to like a proper flamenco show, not like a shitty like hotel crap thing. We went to like
Soho.
a really we went to like a really authentic, well, I hope authentic sort of
Nice.
little bar and had some really lovely food and watched an amazing Spanish guitarist and
Nice.
flamenco dancers.
That's good.
And you
Yeah.
went to Sitges on
And I
a
went to
big gay
Sitges.
night out. Wow.
Ooh.
Bet you were walking
Shocking.
like John Wayne afterwards.
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
She
Do you go with your
that's so
parents?
lovely. It's such a small little gay village.
It's beautiful.
It is lovely.
Sitges Pride is also about 10 times better than Barcelona Pride.
That's what they say. I've never been.
Oh, it is. It's really, really good. Like they have,
Bears is not my thing, really.
well, sorry, bears.
Bears.
No, me neither. But we went there, but like there's, oh yeah, no, I went and there's, like they had the floats, but all the floats are really well themed. Like there's one of those like Tron bikes. It was all like Tron with all the lights.
Everyone
and
is
stuff.
like so friendly though.
Yeah.
Like everyone is welcome there. They love tourists as well.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know.
And I remember going to a nightclub and I was outside the nightclub and someone was like, "Do you want to buy this?" And I'm like, what is that cube? I'm sure there's drugs in there. Let's not get that. And then
Was
I
it a
went.
sugar cube.
It
with
was like a
something
sugar
in it?
cube. It looked like a sugar cube, and I'm like, no, thank you. And then I went inside the bar, and there was a woman who just got married, and she was in this
Oh.
club in her wedding dress in this like
Fun.
dingy gay club, like covered. Like the bottom of the wedding dress was not white. The rest of it was, but the bottom definitely wasn't. It was. Yeah, I was like, okay, that's an interesting place to spend the evening of your wedding day.
Right,
To
we're
a
back
man.
on topic.
Anyway, there is a bar that has a bath in the middle of the dance floor.
I do not want to know what goes on in that.
Not me.
No, no.
No.
So anyway, localization.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Localization.
So obviously, it's, as you said, it's not just translation, but I guess there are a lot of sort of cultural differences as well that apply. So it's not just literally changing the languages, but maybe there's more to that as well. Maybe.
Yeah.
Like in Spider-Man as well. I think you said that the small dialogues, chats that you can kind of like overhear.
Oh yeah, definitely. So well, you always need to be considerate of the audience that these translations are intended to. So I don't know, something might sound offensive to specific audiences, like even not just text, but like graphically. For example, in Japan, like certain games, like you need to like tweak the blood, for example, so that it looks a bit more like bright or fake, because that's a thing as well. But like themes or something in the background also need to be like, you always need to look at it. I remember one of the backgrounds in The Last of Us had to be changed as well because it was could potentially be seen as offensive in certain territories, but it's not just the text, it's everything in the game. But yeah, the text as well. So I don't know, the Middle East is one of the trickiest territories to work with, specifically for all of the LGBTQ plus references in every game. So you always kind of like need to like play around that. Of course, the game is going to be released in those territories, and the developers are likely not going to change their game, rightly so, as they should. So you always need to get around it.
How
and
do you
kinda
get
like-
around that kind of
So
thing?
I don't know if it's like
Just don't release
obviously-
it.
You
Yeah,
have to.
yeah, don't release it would be obviously from a business perspective. I suppose it's not the best.
It's a choice.
Yeah, it is a choice, but you can get around it. I suppose like if it's a very obvious gay relationship, you can say instead that they're friends, or unless obviously something very descriptive appears like on screen, like if in The Last of Us 2, obviously you couldn't say that Ellie and
Dina.
Dina.
were friends when they literally like kissed each other on screen. But yeah, so you where you can, you just get around it, and then it's up to the age rating boards as well, like what happens in the game. Like in Russia, obviously they don't like either like the LGBTQ plus references, but what they do usually is just like up the rating. So instead of a 16, it's an 18. So
Do you ever
like,
have to liaise with them to try and work
yeah,
things
so
out?
there's like not us, it's more like the producers in the
Okay.
team as well. They liaise with the rating boards and they basically tell them, oh, this is what the game is about, and these are the scenes that are potentially like problematic on your country. And then they decide, okay, so we want to give it a higher rating, but it is completely fine as it is, and then you don't need to like do anything about it.
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with how rating boards work because it's not part of my job, but when it comes to translations, yeah, you need to be a bit careful. Like sometimes in Spider-Man, we had a non-binary character, and surprisingly in Spain, and I hate this streamer for the record, a streamer had a very childish reaction when he heard inclusive language being used in Spanish to refer to this character, a non-binary character. It's a secondary character, like completely nothing to do with the whole like plot of the game or anything. It's literally just a side quest, and it's like 2 seconds of dialogue where obvious inclusive language is being used.
Now. Yeah.
But the reaction was, I don't know. He didn't say anything, but he reacted to it obviously in a very childish way and muted the game. And because his fan base is like huge and has a lot of influence in Spain, a lot of people started saying, "Oh, what a shit game," blah 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 blah, because they use inclusive language. And it's like, well, you'll find that in English, these characters being referred to as they them. So we're just staying true to what the game is saying, and that's it. If you don't like it, it's your problem. Mute the game if you want, but it's
I guess that's quite tricky because like with non-binary people, sometimes in different languages it's there are different ways of referring to it, so I guess that can be maybe quite tricky with translating and going through that.
But languages evolve, and like there are ways they're not officially recognized. In Spanish, for example, we have this like, it's called RAE, which is like an academy, like an official entity that regulates the language.
Yeah.
Maybe these things, like these inclusive language terms and whatnot, are not officially recognized, but they are broadly used by the community. And, it doesn't take much for you to actually just accept it. And that's just the way it is. And then you just move on. It's
interesting that
a game.
I was watching it was a TED talk by a lady called Anne Cazon. It was all about like what makes a word, and it was saying like how in France, and although in France they use Englishized or anglicized words, and they get a bit like the government and stuff get a bit annoyed because people talk about like in Spanish they've also got like these are words are correct, but I think there's like, is it like something like networking, or is networking a word in Spanish or something like that? Do they use phrases?
Meeting as well. Meeting is is an English word.
And what do you call working from home?
Teletrabajar.
I thought there's a word.
Weird.
It's like there's a word like for working from home in Spanish that people. I'm just blah blah blah.
Teletrabajar. Yeah. Estoy teletrabajando.
Teleworking or something like that.
Yeah, it's teleworking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Wow.
But yeah, so in Spanish, for example, the the masculine gender is considered to be the neutral.
Yeah.
And that's the official rule or whatever. But obviously, masculine is masculine. It's not neutral. It's masculine.
Yeah.
And feminine is feminine. So if you want to refer to a non-binary person that uses they, them in English, because in English it's so easy, you just have a pronoun for it, but in Spanish you don't. So you just make a new one, and that's it, and you move on. That's it.
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, I recommend that TED Talk as well, because they also talk about like how in Spain, obviously they say this is a word, you can use this word, and in France as well. But in English, like there's no body. The only body is like dictionary, and people go, oh, well, this is the description because it's this in the dictionary. But it's like, no, dictionaries are made after a word gets used. So a word gets used and it becomes quite common, and then it gets added to the dictionary.
Right.
So it's like you don't go to the dictionary to find out what words are correct, because it's like if people start using it in a certain way, then a dictionary will kind of update itself to be like that. Yeah, which is different in other countries.
Yeah. Another thing with that, and shout out to my colleague Victoria, who wrote a piece
Big up V.
on Spider-Man 2. She interviewed the actress who plays Hayley, whose name I've now totally forgotten, and I feel awful.
Wow.
But she spoke to her about sort of the use of sign language for Hayley. And I was just wondering if there were any kind of, if that came up in localization as well in terms of the use of sign language.
Well, unfortunately, we can't, because the game obviously uses American sign language. I know sign language is different. Like I don't know if the British sign language is different from the American.
It is,
It is, yeah. So I suppose it is also different in different parts of the world. But we don't get to like actually change the game, the graphics of the game. So Haley in Spanish will still do American Sign Language. But obviously the translation, the captions
of course.
are translated with what Haley is saying when using sign language. So accessibility is a big part of localization as well. We do audio description as well in cinematics. So for visually impaired players, obviously they hear descriptions of what's happening in the scene as well. So
you said you worked on The Last of Us, was it? Yeah. So and that's isn't it that you
Naughty
can literally
Dog is
play
one of the
you can literally play part 1 blind, can't you? You don't need without completely non-sighted.
Yeah, a lot of developers are getting, because Naughty Dog is pioneer on accessibility. They do have
and
a lot of
as
different...
well.
Insomniac as well, yeah. Actually, accessibility was, audio description is one of the updates that was coming up to Spider-Man, but obviously because of the crime someone committed, it got delayed, but it's coming up anyway.
Crime someone?
The leak.
The
breach,
yes.
We talked about
I thought it was like a crime of the person that did it or something.
No, the breach. No, because of that, obviously things got delayed, but it was meant to come up in the latest update. But so audio description will be available on Spider-Man 2. But a lot of developers are now obviously getting to that level of, because it's the expectation from the audience now, especially now with the access controller and all of that. Is that accessibility is a massive thing now, and it also needs to be localized.
Do you think that we'll see more sign language in games? Because I think Forza was one of the first, I think, to have that as an update where they, because obviously subtitles, they tell you the words, but sign language tells you how it's said, and they can process a lot more.
I mean, that would be another whole level of localization if they actually decided to like change the graphics so that in every different link it would
as a
logistically it would be a nightmare, but I don't know,
get pay rise.
But the thing is, like, you would need to make like as many different versions of the game, as many languages there is, because it's not the same as making, I don't know, maybe 3 different versions of the game where you're using language packs, and you just like apply a language to the game that already exists. If you're changing graphics actually in the game, then you need to make like different versions.
I think in Forza it's like I believe it's like like when you watch a TV show that's audio that's got sign language, it's like a person in front. Like so it'd be just, rather than a subtitles at the bottom, it'd be a person that's kind of pops up over an overlay there. So which could work.
Interesting.
Be interesting. Yeah. I wonder if that will become a thing. Because I've noticed that people say, because obviously when you've got subtitles, there's captions, there's all the different types of various ways of how they explain it. There's also like audio descriptive captions. Having sign language, I feel like obviously I don't need it myself, but people that appreciate that, they say that it, like, you understand a lot more. Thank you. That's why people go, oh, why is there sign language when can't you just have subtitles? And it's like, no, that expresses it. And I think Victoria's interview with the actor that plays Haley, she said that like there's dialects. Was it that one?
Yeah, from what I understand, there are sort of, even obviously American Sign Language is different to British Sign Language, but then there are sort of dialects within that. Wow, and I think that from what they did in terms of the animation, with Haley and Miles, when they're speaking to each other using sign language, there are sort of dialects of certain
really cool.
ways of speaking that comes out in the sign language, which is
really cool.
Yeah.
I also think it was really cool that you actually get to play as Haley as well, part of the game, and experience what
Spoiler
it is.
alert.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Generally, that's
Spoiler.
the best side quest.
I had no idea, and I was like, oh, I've got just a big myself up there. I have played it. It's on my YouTube if you want to check it out.
Yes.
Let's play. But that level did blow me away because I had no idea.
Yeah, I think it's great. It gives you that experience of like how it is to be someone like Haley. So
nice.
It's really cool.
So I guess part of the process as well of localization is then casting actors from other languages. What's your involvement in that, and at what point, again, in the localization process, do you then start looking at other actors?
So that's that's one of the very first things that you do when you work on a game that requires voice acting. Because again, not every game that we work on requires voice acting, because that's another thing. But yeah, when you do have to work on audio, casting is one of the first things that you do, and there's a lot of prep work that comes first before you actually get to think about what actors you're gonna be working with. You need to like get bios from the characters just to know their personality, what their purpose is on the game, what their goal is, you know, how they look like, you know, that kind of thing. You get to know these characters, you familiarize with it, and then you get the samples from how they sound, because they at that point they've already been casted for the language of the game. So if it's English, then the English actors would have already been casted, recorded stuff for the game and whatnot. So you get the samples as well from these source actors, and then you use them to like make like an idea of what the character like sounds like. Or yeah, essentially like actors are gonna differ. So like the Spanish Ellie is not gonna sound like the English Ellie, but you get to like imagine how a Spanish Ellie would sound like. I know it's hard to describe. But yeah, then once you have that, you reach out. Well, we have partners that we work with in different countries, and they have a pool of actors, and they do casting. Sometimes we do live casting, which means that we call these actors in to actually record live lines from the game, the game that they would be working on. But sometimes we do database casting, which is essentially they just send us a sample, and then if we like it, we go with it, and then we give it a go.
Is it similar to like the UK one, where there are certain... Oh, well, do they... Because I know this is the same when it comes to films. Do they have people who tend to be the same voice actors? Like, so for example, if it's Troy Baker, is there somebody that usually does Troy Baker's type of films?
That's more
games?
like a film industry type thing.
Okay.
So like, I don't know, Tom Holland will have an official voice actor in Spain that does everything that Tom Holland does.
Okay.
But in games, that it doesn't necessarily need to be like that. Actually, we tend to avoid that.
Okay, so you don't get the same voice actor. So if there's like a Spider-Man voice actor, you never
Well,
get the same one.
In certain cases, like in France, for example, there is this actor called Donald Regnault. He does pretty much everything Spider-Man in France.
Okay.
So people know him so well, and everything Spider-Man he voices, games, movies, and whatnot. So that's kind of like a set thing.
Yeah.
So if it's Spider-Man, it's gonna be him, and if it's not him, it's gonna be like, ooh, why is it not him?
Yeah. Is this a knockoff?
Yeah. But it's not always the case. And then if we have the likes of, if there is a movie, because some people think, okay, if there is a movie and for example it's like Wolverine, and in the movie is Hugh Jackman, are you gonna cast the actors that voice Hugh Jackman in all the movies and whatnot? We tend to avoid that.
Yeah.
So we tend to think of like from a creative point of view and just focus on the character itself in the game and the purpose and, you know, the personality of that character, and then choose a voice that matches that, as opposed to like think about names.
Yeah.
But obviously we're not the only ones making a decision here. Then there's a lot of like PR benefits that, you know, sometimes they say, oh, let's bring in an influencer, and that's a nightmare for us because it's like influencers are great because obviously they bring a lot of PR benefits, and then they stream the game, and then they're like, oh, look, this is me in the game and whatnot, and they get 1 million views, and it's great. But they are a nightmare to work with because they don't have any sort of experience in voice acting. Yeah. And if you've been watching all of these podcast series, you'll know that all these like good voice actors have years and years of experience working in voice acting, which influencers don't, unfortunately. So working with influencers, actually sometimes surprisingly they do a good job. Pure luck because they've not done it before, but suddenly they have a prodigy type voice and whatnot. But yeah, voice acting is a career, and you need loads of experience in voice acting to actually be able to do it properly and for such a long time, because like some recording sessions can go on for hours and your voice breaks as well. Like Pete on Spider-Man 2 had so many like screams, and like I don't want to give much away for those that have not played the game, but like, you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like screaming all the time and whatnot. So those
The
are
sex
like,
scene.
yeah, the sex scene. But yeah, those are like incredibly hard to record. So you need like super trained voice actors to be able to do that. So you cannot just go like with, yeah, sure, let's go with the voice of blah and blah. You know, you need to be very careful.
I don't think of any influencers that have been casting games in English.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are some influencers that you know do have training or whatever and have just gone into that.
Don't get me wrong, I've had good experiences with influencers.
Yeah,
In Ratchet and Clank, we had a German influencer do Rivet, and she did an amazing job. And then, you know, like she was streaming the game and everything. Everyone was like so happy with her being in the game. And I was terrified because people kept telling me like, "Oh, you have an influencer; it's gonna be shit." I'm like, "Oh, but she sounds so lovely," and I was like, "Yeah, let's go with it." And then, you know, but we've had influencers doing like a side quest type thing, that's 2 lines, and then they can just be like, "Oh yeah, we're in the game," and that's it.
I would do that. I'd take that.
PlayStation.
Don't think I'm quite big enough for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So obviously the last game you worked on was
2 podcast
Spider-Man
hosts
2,
in Spider-Man 3. If that game exists.
if it exists.
Yeah. If
If they need a podcast, well, it will be set in America.
I can put on a voice. I don't think that's New York, is it?
No, you've lost it. You've lost it already.
Damn it.
Instead of the Danny cast, it would be the Ben cast.
Yeah, the Swapping Joysticks cast. I don't think that'd get past.
That's trademark.
They wouldn't be able to put that
no,
on.
exactly.
That would not
Legal
be able to
issues.
be.
Legal issues.
I mean, also they wouldn't be able to release that in the Middle East or Russia, would they?
That's true.
That's true. Anyway, so Spider-Man 2 was like the last game that you worked on. How was that in general for you? Like, do you remember when you first got to see it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was such a blast. This is the highlight of my career at PlayStation so far. I've been working there for very little, just like for over 4 years. But literally, best game I'm such a fan as well of the franchise and Marvel in general.
Yeah.
Which made it like even like 10 times better. And the producer that I worked with, Adam, as well. Shout out to you if you're listening to this. He's also a massive Marvel nerd. So it was like 2 nerds working in the dream type of game. It was so challenging, like so challenging. A AAA full of like different new features that we've not done before. Like all of these like conversations that were like randomly happening in the background. That's a nightmare to localize.
Yeah. When didn't you say that it was quite interesting seeing when people found those conversations?
Yeah, because like I didn't expect it to blow up like that, like in social media. Like people were actually, you would have thought in a game like Spider-Man, people were just like swinging by and not walking around in the streets.
Yeah.
But people actually did, and people actually listened to the conversations that some pedestrians were talking about, and it's just like, okay, mind blowing, because we did localize that, and it was challenging.
Yeah.
You know, to localize all of that, because most of it is improv.
Okay.
And you have like people just randomly chatting about stuff.
So that was improv in English, but then you have to go and
Well,
localize
it's improv in
Did
English,
you
and then
translate it, or did you let the local actors improv themselves?
you give them a general direction of what they need to talk about, but they need a script. Because otherwise you can tell them, okay, do improv, but then you lose control on what's being said, and you need to be extremely careful, because if they mention a brand name, because you say improv or whatever, but then they can be like, oh, so yesterday I was checking Instagram, blah 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 blah, Instagram, legal issues, you know, that kind of thing. It's like you need to be like super careful. I actually learned a lot about brands. Frisbee is a brand.
Yeah.
And I think there is a photo op thing, the photo op side quest thing, where 2 people like are throwing a flying disc.
It's a flying disc. Yeah.
So yeah, all of that is like something that you also need to take into account when you localize games. But anyway, working on Spider-Man, the dream. Massive challenges, but I loved it throughout. when I first got to play it, I was kind of like shaking. I was like, "Whoa." And it was literally just storyboards and rough cinematics and whatnot. But I was so excited. And yeah, while I was working on it, fully focused, super busy. But then you just get to see the end of it. The game releases. Everyone is so happy. And then you move on. It's like now it's like, ugh.
Yeah, the scores are fantastic for that. And I mean, I think everybody
yeah.
that's played it loved it.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about it. So yeah, lots of people like reaching out. Oh, I saw your name in the credits, and it's like,
Oh,
cool, yeah.
I did look out for you.
Don't
when
look
I
for me.
finished it.
Well, I was streaming it looking for you and I missed
Nah,
it.
it's just so many names, and people just most people just skip that part because it's the uncool part of
But it
the
was
credits.
Well, it was near the beginning of the uncool part, though. And I think at that 1 second that you went up, I was looking away at something, and I went and looked.
Sure.
No, I looked
sure.
back. I looked back on the VOD. It's on here. Like there's because I'm telling people in the chat. Well, in the chat because it's a recorded let's play. I'm like, okay, we need to look out for Juan. We need to look out for Juan. And then I'm like, we're getting to like random, countries and all these other places. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've missed it. And, yeah.
My goal is to one day get in the animated credits somehow, even if it's just like special thanks to Juan for being yourself. I don't know, like whatever.
Deserved.
Being yourself.
Deserved.
Because that's the cool part. But yeah, I know a lot of people that are part of those animated credits from Insomniac that I've worked with. It's like shout out to them because they definitely deserve it. There's so much work going on behind the scenes. Localization is just one tiny bit, like the tiny part at the end of it. But yeah,
Sounds vital though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you maybe touched on this just briefly before, but what were some of the biggest challenges with localizing Spider-Man in particular?
So these randomized conversations were definitely a big challenge, mainly because of the gender things as well. Because like in English, you don't have such thing as gendered words. So if it's a female pedestrian talking to a male pedestrian and they're like having a conversation about stuff, that conversation might be transferable to a male talking to a male in English, but in Spanish it's not. So you need to figure out a way to neutralize a different thing, say a different, like paraphrasing something so that it works in both scenarios. That's paraphrasing stuff or neutralizing stuff is one of the main challenges in localization. But that's just part of it. That's just because that's how languages work. But yeah, that was potentially one of it. And also all of the LGBTQ plus references that the game has is a lot. Yeah, for
Which
certain
is great.
territories,
I love
which is great.
the side
yeah.
quest where you have to help
VJ.
spoiler,
Oh, the
where you have
VJ
to help
and
him
Lucas,
to like
yeah.
invite him to the dance or whatever it is.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, that was localized fine for the majority of countries, but yeah, had to be slightly tweaked for certain languages. But yeah, I don't know, a bunch of jokes and references as well. Jokes and references, like pop culture references, are hard to translate sometimes. Like Pete is such a jokey character, like always, especially with what happens in Spider-Man 2, becomes even more like sassy and whatnot. But those, like the change in personality and all the jokes and references, also something really hard to translate. So shout out to all the translators that worked on this project because they did an amazing job at keeping like the language fresh and recognizable for the audience in that country, using a lot of like pop culture references and whatnot. I think it was French again, where there was a scene, it was in the trailers as well, where Pete is about to fight like a berserk guy, like almost dressed like a bear with a massive axe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In the I think it's in the laboratory lab thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I forgot the name of it anyway. So I think in French he's using, when he says something like, "I ran out of honey" or something. I didn't know there were bear in these woods.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think in French he uses like a famous sentence of Winnie the Pooh or something like that. That people recognize and they were like, "Oh, that's really cool." So, you know, that kind of thing is really appreciated by the audience, and it's all down to like the translators being aware of what works in the different countries. So
Yeah. And last year you got to go to the Insomniac office.
I did, yeah. I was in
How
LA,
was that?
in Burbank. It was really cool to see all of their setup. Yeah, it's unfortunately a lot of people work remotely, so the office is a little bit of like a ghost town, likely in
Everywhere.
our studios, yeah, everywhere now around the world. But yeah, it was really cool. Lots of merch flying around. I was like, what? That's really cool. They had all of these like for Spider-Man 2, they had a bunch of different things like the shoes, all the sunglasses as well, the Warby Parker, like different sunglasses. They have them all
What did
there.
you steal?
Yeah, I was about to say, did
I
you,
didn't
did you come
steal
back with
anything.
a packed
I
suitcase?
wish. All eyes were on me. I didn't want to like cause any trouble, but I would have happily taken the Adidas, the Miles Adidas version.
Did you see where they recorded people's facial animations?
Yeah,
the
the
mocap.
scanner.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we I did see they had a mocap room in there. It was really cool. Obviously, I suppose it's cooler if you see it in action. But yeah, they have a mocap room there. They also have a scanner as well, which is really cool. A really cool scanner to scan people's clothes and whatnot, like bodies and faces into the game. It's really cool. Really, really cool. Really nice experience. And it was really cool to see and meet people in person that you've worked with for so long on a game like that, and just chat and like go over, what went wrong, what went well, and just generally like spend time with them as well. There it was like really cool.
Nice. So I'm sure people have probably got a sense of this from listening until now. If you have, thank you. But what are the kind of main benefits then of localization? Like, why should people localize their game?
I suppose in different countries, people are expecting to have like their language available to play games because they're used to it. Like countries like Spain, France, Italy, Germany, even though potentially the level of English is okay, they just prefer to play games in their own language because, I suppose they're used to watching films in Spanish. They're used to watching series in Spanish. So it's no different to that, like when it comes to games. So yeah, I suppose there is an expectation there that the audience, when for example if you release a game in Russia and it's in English, people are like, it's in English, So yeah, localization always brings a lot of benefits in terms of like releasing the game in those countries. So if a game is dubbed in those languages, it is likely to be played a lot more than if it's just in English. But yeah, I suppose making the games more accessible to people again goes back to accessibility. So like if the game is in English and all it does is like English audio description and captions, someone that is blind in Spain is never gonna bother playing that game.
Yeah.
So I think it's essential to localize games in general and to like with as many languages as possible, because people actually play these games in these languages. People think I play the games in English. That's just my personal preference, but I know like all of my friends back home, they just play games in Spanish and they're used to that, and probably that's what I would do as well if I lived in that country. But,
Do you find that some countries like you might have quite a big fan base, but because they're so used to playing things in English, you just don't do that? Like I imagine like the Scandinavian countries.
The Netherlands, for example, their level of English is pretty good, and we do dub sometimes into Dutch. Ratchet and Clank, for example, was dubbed in Dutch, but because Ratchet and Clank is more like a younger audience, so maybe that's where the appeal is there. So dubbing it in Dutch, or Nordic countries is another thing. Like mostly just translating and not voicing, but because people are mostly used to like playing games and watching movies and watching TV series in English, so. That's where it comes from, really.
I remember I've got a friend, like when I lived in Barcelona, I had quite a lot of friends from Portugal, and they were saying how they don't really watch films dubbed in Portuguese, like into Portuguese, but in Brazil, that's a massive market. Like in Brazil,
Oh, yeah, Brazil, yeah.
so Brazil, like that Portuguese, a lot of the biggest films get dubbed into Portuguese or Brazilian Portuguese, and people watch it. But when it actually is in Portugal, they tend to watch the. This is just like I've been like told by a couple of Portuguese friends, where they said in Portugal, they usually watch the original versions, unless you're really young.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, with games, Portugal, like
Yeah.
Portuguese from Portugal is pretty big. Like Spider-Man had a massive success because one of the Craven was actually a famous. Was it Craven? Craven or Venom? One of the two was a famous band guy, band singer, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, this guy's in the game," and they played the game in Portuguese. But yeah, Brazilian Portuguese. Brazil is a massive dubbing country.
Yeah.
Latin America is also a massive dubbing country, like
With-
in Mexico and whatnot.
Yeah, with Latin America, do you do different versions of
absolutely.
Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
interesting.
And it works as a completely separate language. It's not like one based off of another.
Yeah.
Completely separate things. And same with Portugal and
Is that with
Brazil.
dubbing as well, not just with
Yeah.
text?
Text
Interesting,
and
yeah. Because
dubbing.
like obviously British and American English are very, very similar, but sometimes you'll go on to something that'll be like, do you want it in US English or British English? But when it comes to dubbing, there's never any like difference when it comes to voice acting. You'll never play a game where there's two options.
But you can tell though, like Final Fantasy 16. There we go.
Yeah,
You can tell.
that's very British.
I love it though.
Do you like Karen?
Karen.
You're right.
Oh,
Right, Clive,
God.
how's it going?
Of course, he likes
died
the
yet?
northerner. Of course, he likes the
Yeah.
northerner.
I love this like Jill, Karen, and Clive. It's like the most British bank manager names.
British.
British.
Yeah. And what was the I know I can't remember what I was going to say now, but it was to do with Final Fantasy. But yeah, Final Fantasy 14. I still can't believe that they haven't like translated that into Spanish yet.
Have they not?
No, it's wild, and it's like this massive, massive game, and yeah.
Probably because not enough Spanish players.
It's nothing to do with really this as well. Well, it's to do with translation. But when I lived in Spain, my one annoyance was that Call of Duty, you buy it in Spain and it would only have Spanish on there. So I learned Derrota and Victoria. I learned I know everything about guns in Spanish now and shooting
Wow.
and
Very useful.
yeah. So yeah, I've got a perfect.
Well, there you go. Video games are a good way of learning. a
Learning
language.
That is
language,
genuinely
yeah.
true. I used to have a student who was like 14 and he was obsessed with Dota, League of Legends, and The Witcher. And he used to be like his level of English was so high because he was just obsessed with The Witcher.
I think I partly owe it to video games that I have a good level of English. You know, like I played games since I was very young, and they were unfortunately in English. Like Final Fantasy VII, the original one, was in English for me. And when I saw
the
the
English
Spanish
is not always the best translation, is it?
I know.
These are...
Well, I know. If you saw the Spanish translation
Oh, is it?
of the original Final Fantasy VII, then you would
even worse.
scream. Oh, there's a. Have you played it? Well, you have played it.
I
for
played,
sure. You've played it.
half of it.
You know the Don Corneo bit.
Yes.
Where, with Tifa, Eric, and
Yeah.
Cloud, and he says something like "little chicks," something like that, or like.
My little birds or something. I think he
little
says.
chicks. I think he says little chicks.
Okay.
I know where I'm going with this.
Oh no, did you
Little
say
chicks.
poi?
Pollitas. Pollitas, which, I mean, technically...
Is
it
that
sounds
quite
like
rude?
Little
dicks.
Little dicks, yeah.
My little dicks.
My little...
Oh, that's a story. Yeah.
Lots of different things like that in the original version of Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, and then there's like one bad translation in English, and everyone's running with it forever. Like these guys, this guys are sick. Is it?
Something like that.
This
yeah.
guy are sick, and then they patch it out. There's a few like language things that maybe we don't use nowadays.
Well, this is why localization is important.
Yeah.
Very important.
It feels like it's like very, very much taken for granted.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because I guess people just expect to be able to play a game in their language, but there is clearly so much work that goes into localization.
And not just
Yeah.
in the games, like what's been said or written down in the game. It's
Yeah.
everything
and
around
bear
it.
in mind that translators and actors don't always, like, or never have the luxury of actually playing the game while they're working. So, we give them as much reference as we possibly can, but ultimately they're doing this job without actually being able to see like the results. That's where a lot of the QA testing, localization QA testing comes, because they obviously have access to the game and they play the game and they see context and whatnot, and they fix a lot of stuff. And then if we need to re-record something, that's where we call the actors back, and that's a bit annoying to them, but it is what it is. Sometimes you need to come back just for one line.
But I guess, did they have any issues when it was during COVID? Like, because obviously you're speaking with so many people. What happens if people get COVID, for example, during it?
Well,
so I guess you dealt with
tough.
that.
Yeah, you deal with it. Especially if it's sometimes you get creative. If the re-recording is about a line and they actually just cannot record it, you just find another line that works in the same context.
Interesting.
That's last resort type thing. Yeah, you just, if they're sick, you just tend to wait.
Yeah. So why have you got? Hello, how are you? Oh, you sound a bit different to normal.
It happened, and that's the mild version of a problem. I've had actors dying. Unfortunately, you have to cast old people in games as well, and life happens.
Did that happen in Spider-Man or?
I don't recall.
I was reading about one game where it was like in French or German. And it was a really famous voice actor that passed away right in the middle of a game.
Wow.
That
has that ever happened to you with?
Potentially, I don't recall any like main big actors. Obviously, like in a massive game like Spider-Man, you have so many different actors. Some are bound to. Some of them disappear. Like some of them literally just go on a holiday somewhere and never come back. But thankfully, never like the main cast or anything like that. But like it happens. Like I've had actors just disappearing sometimes, and you just deal with it. You just re-record that entire character again. Yeah, and that's it.
You pay them at the end.
No.
Oh, okay. That's why they're on holiday. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it happens, and you just deal with it. That's our life as project managers.
Yeah, when you're a manager, you just got to deal with it.
Exactly.
What's next?
That was it.
What was the last one?
Is that what it is?
The last one.
Oh, you want to do that one?
I think that was a nice one to end on.
Great. What
just out him. I'm going to out you now.
Are you going to out me now?
Well, you are also a member of PlayStation's Pride group.
I am, yeah.
What kind of stuff does that do? Do PlayStation do internally? I mean, obviously, I know they sponsor London Pride.
Yes.
For the last few years.
Actually, marketing is a big part of it. Well, not marketing. The UK territory is, because as we do PlayStation Spain, PlayStation France, PlayStation Portugal, and whatnot, there's also PlayStation UK, and they are a big part of sponsoring Pride in London. We help Pride at PlayStation. The employee network helps in terms of like giving advice on like the theme and whatnot, and the props and performers and whatnot. But yeah, we do loads of events internally, panel events. We have guests as well, socials, and that's all extra to our day-to-day jobs as well. So I got dragged pretty much in it because when I started at PlayStation, I wasn't very busy until I actually started working on Ratchet. So I just kept myself busy, and I was very involved. I was like, oh, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. And then someone said, oh, maybe you should be in the
why don't you do it?
Yeah, actually. So yeah, that's how I got in. And then I just got involved, and it's fun. Obviously, again, it's like something extra to your job, and not always is like I don't always have the time to sit down and organize an event, because that's actually a job. But yeah, so right now actually we're organizing a panel event. We're gonna have people from different PlayStation studios talk about different things. So yeah, that should be interesting. Yeah. We've had like lots of like speakers, drag queens come around as well. It's a fun little thing, and we have loads of. It's not just Pride. We have loads of like different employee networks. There's one representing different ethnicities as well. able as well for different disabilities as well, families. I don't know, a bunch of women at PlayStation, bunch of them. And each one of those employee networks does different events and different panels and whatnot.
It's nice to feel recognized and supported.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Like, I think PlayStation is a great place to work if you're part of a community, because everyone there is kind of like a good vibe. It's not like everyone is going to judge you because you're I don't know, identifying different than the rest. So yeah,
brilliant.
Very cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
and
for
being
having
here.
me.
Yeah, thanks for coming to our flat.
We're going to pay your fee in food because Ed.
Yes, looking
What
forward
are you cooking,
to that.
Ed?
I'm going to attempt some Korean fried chicken in the air fryer.
Oh, you're not doing the gochujang, are you? Not the is it gochujang? What's the stuff?
Gochujang.
What? No, what's the stuff that you poisoned me with the other week?
I did not poison you.
Definitely
Ben.
did.
Looking forward to this.
No, I tried to make some homemade kimchi.
Yum.
And I love kimchi.
I
and
love
think
kimchi.
It tasted great, and unfortunately,
It did taste nice.
it did not agree with him, which I think is a Ben problem.
Yeah, sounds like a you problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to trying tonight's.
I mean, it's fried chicken. It'll be fine.
Yeah, great. We'll just get KFC if it's no disaster.
Oh.
No. But Juan, where can we find you? If people want to go and follow you and stalk you.
Yeah, sure. I'm only on Instagram, to be fair. And I don't post anything really that it's not about my personal life. But yeah, if you want to follow me, feel free to do so. It's Juan.high5. Just like that.
There you go.
Yeah, no Twitter, no Facebook.
That's the wise thing to do.
Yeah, that sounds like
It's
the
too
dream.
stressful. Like, too stressful to keep up. But yeah.
Instagram's the best one. Ed, where can we find you?
You can find me at ed_nights on Twitch, on Twitter, and on Instagram.
Yeah, find me. Just search Biggest Bennis wherever, and you'll find my profile. And if you want to go and check out some more Swapping Joysticks episodes, including our previous interviews as well as our weekly where we just chat about whatever we've been playing, then just go to swappinjoysticks.com and click on the links. I'm looking at the wrong camera. Click on the links on there and subscribe and like and vote. Not vote. What?
Vote.
You can review.
Vote.
You can leave a.
Well, no, please vote in your local
please vote,
elections.
yeah.
Yeah, vote. Always vote. But don't vote for us. Vote for the people that aren't assholes. Yeah, no, rate. You can rate us on.
Can you?
People have rated us. We're like
Positively?
We've got 5 stars from 4 ratings on either Spotify or
thank you to
Apple.
those people.
Thank you very much. Yes, your money is in the post. But yeah, have a good one. We will see you next time for more Swapping Joysticks.
Yeah, and big thanks to Juan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye.
having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.